Yeah, welcome back, friends. We'll be discussing the last part of the first unit, that is other important issues relating to contract of sale. Let's start. Contract of sale, how is it made? It's pretty simple, straightforward. One, there should be an offer to buy or sell goods. Like what we have understood in Contract Act, there should be an offerer, there should be an acceptor, which means here there should be an offer either made by the buyer or by the seller and accepted by the opposite party. That is, if the offer is made by the buyer, seller should accept it. Reverse, if the offer is made by the seller, the buyer should accept it. And that offer acceptance should be of goods and it should be for a particular price. So offer to buy or sell goods, acceptance of such offer for a particular price. Now comes the important analysis when it comes to these the other 2 points. What does the other 2 points say? Please carefully read it. Immediate or future delivery of goods, including installment delivery of goods. Immediate or future payment of price, including installment payment of price. Now we have different combinations. We can work out different analysis here. Please appreciate the importance or depths involved in it. When I say immediate delivery of goods, that means today I am delivering the goods to the buyer as a seller. When I say future delivery of goods, that means today we are entering into a contract to deliver the goods in future. And third one, delivery including installment delivery means I can enter into a contract today to deliver the goods in installments spread across various dates or various months. When we come to immediate or future payment of price including installment system of price, the same logic works, wherein immediate payment of price, today I am making the payment of price, or it could be a future payment of price. On a known future date, we commit to give the payment of price, or the price could be paid in installment mechanisms spread across different months or different time horizon. So as it is pretty simple. That is immediate delivery of goods, future delivery of goods, installment delivery of goods, or immediate payment of price, future payment of price, and installment payment of price. So when it is a straightforward case like this, where is the depth involved? The depth is here. Please check this. There could be a possibility of immediate delivery of goods and immediate payment of price, one case. Future delivery of goods, future payment of price, second case. Installment delivery of goods and installment payment of price, third case. Now comes the reverse or the twist. What is the twist here? Immediate delivery of goods, but future payment of price is also possible. Immediate delivery of goods and installment payment of price is also possible. So we have almost covered 5 cases now. Later, next, immediate or future delivery of goods, but immediate payment of price is also one possibility. Next, installment delivery of goods, that means goods can be delivered in installment, but payment of price is immediately, that is also one possibility. Next, installment delivery of goods can be delivered in installments and future payment of price is also one possibility. And lastly, installment delivery of goods and installment payment of price is also one possibility. So we have 3 cases here, 3 cases here. We do have permutations and combinations. That many possibilities arises in the case of immediate / future / installment of delivery of goods and payment of price. I hope the explanation was sufficient for you to understand it. In case you get a little confused, please rewind the video, watch it slowly again and again, you will get it. The next topic that we will be discussing is subject matter of sale. What is the subject matter of sale? What are the important points that is to be given in the exams by the students? Goods must be in existing goods, which we have already covered in types of goods, that is existing, specific goods, ascertained goods, unascertained goods, future goods. So goods must be in existing goods which is owned or possessed by the seller. This is a precondition. then it may be future goods or it may be contingent goods. The goods is subject matter of contract could be future goods, which we have already discussed, or it could be contingent goods. Sir, then what is the difference between future goods and contingent goods? Simple. In future goods, I told you that it is yet to be or to be manufactured or produced or acquired by the seller, which is called future goods. In contingent goods, it's the same logic, but it is based on a happening or non-happening of an uncertain future event. Means contingent goods are those goods which is to be manufactured or produced or acquired by the seller based on a future uncertain event. If that event happens, the contract may go through. If the event does not happen, the contract may not go through. So that is called contingent goods. The word contingent, contingency, may or may not happen itself gives you the meaning of contingent goods. So what are the subject matters that we are trying to discuss? Subject matter of a contract of sale states that goods must be in existing goods which could be owned or possessed by the seller, or if it is a future goods, or if it is contingent goods, then only the contract of sale or subject matter of contract of sale can be established. Now comes the important analysis here. If it is a present sale of future goods, I told you in one of the videos that actual sale of future goods is not possible. But if it is a present sale of future goods, then we can at the best term it as an agreement to sell, but not a sale. So it adds value to the point where which I told in the previous sessions that actual sale of future goods is not possible. At the best, I can term it as just an agreement to sell, connecting with the point of future goods or contingent goods. So in case of future goods or contingent goods, I cannot make a sale, I can at the best make an agreement to sell. I hope you have understood by now what is the difference between sale and agreement to sell, which we have also covered in the previous sessions. Let's see the analysis part here. Very important, these last 2 points plays a very critical role in understanding the subject matter of contract of sale. What is that? If the goods have perished before making the contract of sale, unknowing to both the parties, very important, neither the buyer nor the seller is aware that the goods has already perished before entering into the contract of sale. Then what happens? Quite logical. The buyer also does not know that the goods is perished. The seller also does not know that the goods is perished, that is destroyed. When buyer and seller, who are the offerers and acceptors respectively, do not know that the goods have been perished before entering into the contract of sale, then such contracts have to be termed as void contracts. Nobody can be held responsible here. Am I clear, my dear friends? When the buyer and the seller is unaware, they do not know that the goods have been perished already. After the goods have been perished, how can they enter into a contract of sale when the goods itself is not there? So basic common sense question. For that the answer is simple. Such cases are called void cases. Now interesting to note where there is an agreement to sell which is entered upon, but the contract is not yet concluded. That means we are between a phase where agreement to sell is already there, contract is yet to be completed. That is the case. Goods perishing before sale, but after agreement to sell. Agreement to sell has been entered into, sale is yet to be concluded. In between this, the goods have been perished without the interference of both the parties. Let's say the godown where the goods was there, primarily you should understand that when agreement to sell was entered into, both the parties were aware that the goods was there. But before the contract of sale was concluded, the goods have been destroyed. That is the scenario. The earlier scenario was pretty easy, where buyer and seller did not even know that the goods had perished. Here, when the agreement to sell was entered into, goods was definitely there. Let's say it was there in a warehouse. Now, before concluding the contract, after agreement to sell, the goods is, let's say, destroyed in the warehouse by an act of God, force majeure. Let's say a tsunami has come and hit it, or it is waterlogged, or it is destroyed by fire, whatever could be the reason, then goods perishing before sale but after agreement to sell, such agreement is also void. Now you may ask me a question, whose loss is it? Please go back to the session that we discussed on sale versus agreement to sell. If it is agreement to sell but before sale, any loss of the goods should be borne by the seller itself because ownership is not yet transferred from the seller to the buyer. The risks and rewards is yet to be transferred. Therefore, the seller has to undergo the loss. Of course, he may have insurance and recover insurance claims out of such destructions. That's all possible. But having said that, for us, for the limited purpose of understanding subject matter of contract of sale, if there is an agreement to sell, but the goods have been destroyed before the actual sale, before the conclusion of the contract, then it has to be said that the agreement to sell is void. I hope it is very clear now. We move on to the last aspect of the first unit, that is ascertainment of price. It's a fantastic topic. Believe you me, it has a lot of trickiness involved. Let's see what it is. Section 9 states that, Section 9 of the Contract Act 1930 states that price in a contract of sale may be one, fixed by the contract itself. That is, both the buyer and seller can fix the contract price. Second, it can be agreed to be fixed in a manner provided in the contract. That means in the contract itself, where the buyer and the seller have agreed that the price can be fixed in a particular manner. Please understand, the buyer and seller is not yet fixed the price, but they have agreed to fix the price in a particular manner. Example, A buyer, B a seller have agreed to fix the price by a third party called valuer. Quite possible, where A and B are not clear about what is the value of the goods or what is the price of the goods, they can take the help of a valuer and put such a clause in the agreement that price to be fixed by a valuer. Such contracts are definitely valid. And third one, determined by the course of dealings. What do you mean by determined by the course of dealings? We have in village side, if you go, you see Sunday markets happening, weekly markets happening, wherein the buyer and seller shakes hands, puts the towel on their hands, and they press first finger, they press second finger, they press third finger. That means they're trying to negotiate the price. Let's say, I'll take an example where, let's say this is the buyer's hand, this is the seller's hand, they shake hands, and if the buyer presses first finger here, then he says it is 1,000 rupees. Let's say they are trading in on a particular product. Then if the seller says he uses the second finger, then he is expecting 2,000 rupees. Now the buyer, let's say he breaks his or bends his hand and bends his finger and presses the palm, then he is suggesting that he is asking it for 1,500 rupees. Somewhere they strike a deal by their handshake on a closed circuit. That means on this hand there will be a towel wherein no other person could see, only the buyer and seller respectively understands what the pricing mechanism is. So it could be determined by the course of dealings. So how can a price be fixed? As per section 9, it can be fixed by the contract between the buyer and seller itself, or it could be fixed by a third party called the valuer, which is as agreed upon by the contract, or lastly, it can be determined by the course of dealings between the parties. The interesting point is, coming to the second point, there are two issues here, very important issues. Kindly observe this, concentrate. If there is an agreement that the price should be fixed by the manner provided in the contract, let's say a valuer, what if price is not fixed? That means what if the valuer does not fix this, or what if the valuer doesn't turn up that day? In such case, we have to bank on certain logical thoughts here. If the price is not fixed by a third party, and delivery yet to happen, if the goods is yet to be delivered, then the agreement is void. Why? If the price itself is not yet determined by the buyer, nor the seller, nor the third party, how can the contract take place? So definitely such agreements have to be treated as void. Sir, no sir, let's have a little bit twist. What is it? If there is a part delivery of the goods and That means the delivery, part delivery of the goods has already happened, price is yet to be fixed by the valuer. In such cases, what happens is we have to use quasi-contracts as a basis, and the buyer has to pay some reasonable price related to that product. Now, reasonable price depends on facts and situations. It can change in every scenario. Therefore, reasonable price is to be understood as a generic word. That is, reasonable price has to be paid when there is part delivery, but the valuation is yet to be determined by the third party. I hope this is very clear. And lastly, by chance, if the third party, that is the valuer, was prevented by the seller or the buyer respectively not to determine the price intentionally, the buyer or the seller, both of them not possible, either the buyer has intentionally prevented the valuer to give the price, or the seller has intentionally prevented the valuer to determine the price, then please see this: party not at fault can sue for damages on party at fault. Party not at fault can file a case and sue for damages on the party not at fault. Party at fault. I repeat, party not at fault can file a case for damages on party at fault. Let's take an example. Let's say the buyer and seller agreed upon to contract where the price is to be determined of that particular goods by the valuer. Buyer intentionally prevents the valuer to determine the price. Eventually, the contract is void. Agreed, because the valuer has not given the price. But what is the recourse for the seller here? Who is the party at fault here? Buyer is the party at fault. Who is the party not at fault here? Seller is the party who is not at fault. So the seller can file a case on the buyer to claim for damages. The damages could be whatever loss he's incurred because this contract could not go through. So that was all about the first unit of contract of sale, that is Sale of Goods Act 1930. In due course, I will be doing the other sessions also. Next session is a pretty interesting session on conditions and warranties. If you have any doubts about this chapter or any issues related to this chapter, please do mail it to me at lohitsacademy@gmail.com. I shall revert back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you so much.